Dragged away.
I'm giving it to the office.
Here in New York, DHS telling us that in recent days and weeks, the number of death threats against officers has increased a staggering 8,000%.
The FBI director is calling it the first Antifa-related terrorism charge after an executive order by the president.
Federal agents just broke down doors in 3 different states. The city of Portland is about 145 square miles. This is one city block. And what they found exposed America's most dangerous movement, Antifa. A lot of people think that we're like burning our city down and we're rioting and destroying everything. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security just announced that they've taken down the main leaders of Antifa, a network that prosecutors have now linked to arson, charity fraud, and planned attacks on police. In Georgia, 61 people were charged under the same crime laws once used against the mob. In Portland and Chicago, federal task forces are rounding up people accused of domestic terrorism. Investigators say the protest was peaceful, but they believe Antifa members snuck into that rally. Police say 10 people refused orders to leave and were arrested. For years, politicians called Antifa a myth. Now, grand juries are calling it a criminal group. And behind the arrests, secret chats and money trails that cross state lines, there is a web of beliefs that just got pulled out into the open. This goes beyond street protests. This is organized resistance, and the government just declared war on it. Antifa beats journalists. Antifa attacks our police stations. They attack our courthouses. They reveal the personal information of our law enforcement officers. No more. They are a terrorist group, and we are coming after them. It started just after midnight in Atlanta, but months before the FBI and DHS were sent in for the major raid, agents had been tracking a group that called itself Defend the Atlanta Forest, a loose network of activists, environmental warriors, and self-described anarchists who turned a construction site into a war zone. This was a very violent attack that happened this evening. Very violent attack. This wasn't about a public safety training center. This was about anarchy. And this was about the attempt to cause chaos. They weren't the only ones. Small groups had been showing up in several states across the U.S. over the last few years, causing chaos and destruction using bombs and homemade weapons. On the outside, these looked like random groups with different goals, not connected at all. But when investigators looked closely, they found more than one thread connecting these small groups to a larger, more dangerous, organized group: Antifa. If anything comes up for you or you're upset in this environment, we care about your inner safety as well as your physical safety. Now, Antifa is not new to the US government. They've been around for decades and were active in Europe during World War II before spreading across the world. But it was their activity in the US that caught the government's attention. In the past few years, those activities have gotten more and more unpredictable and dangerous. But it wasn't until those chaotic protests turned into fortified camps that officials realized this wasn't just a loose movement anymore. This wasn't about a public safety training center. This was about anarchy. And this was about the attempt to cause chaos. It was becoming an organized resistance. And when law enforcement moved in on the Defend the Atlanta Forest camp that night, what they found was worse than expected. Tents reinforced with sandbags, stockpiles of fireworks, gasoline, and body armor. And to make it worse, they found spray-painted messages reading "Burn Cop City" and "Fire to the Earth Destroyers," the kind of messages Antifa is known to leave behind after an attack. The FBI's evidence team moved carefully, going through the scene inch by inch, because one wrong step could ruin the whole mission. With everything they found, by dawn, Georgia's Attorney General called an emergency meeting. A few hours later, 61 names of top Antifa members appeared on a charge sheet stretching over 100 pages, with charges of arson, money laundering, and racketeering under the state's RICO law. The same law once used to break up the Italian mob, now for the first time aimed directly at self-proclaimed anti-fascists. Why? According to prosecutors, the self-proclaimed unorganized group is actually more organized than it appears. Looking like they have no structure is a trick Antifa uses to get away with terrible attacks, but not anymore. If I said, for example, how many other Antifa groups are there that have a clear organizational strategy that's similar to Rose City Antifa? Now, investigators knew their strategies. They could easily connect the attacks. While they wanted the attacks to look random, their attacks were part of a planned campaign stretching across multiple states. But the Georgia arrests were just the beginning. We just got an update from the U.S. Justice Department on a shooting that left an El Paso police officer injured this weekend. The Department of Justice calls this an ambush near the Prairieland Detention Center. We just got an update from the U.S. Justice Department on a shooting that left an El Paso police officer injured this weekend. The Department of Justice calls this an ambush near the Prairieland Detention Center. 10 days later, in Texas, an ambush outside the Prairieland ICE Detention Center left a local officer bleeding from the neck. Investigators say attackers used fireworks to lure guards outside, then opened fire from the tree line. By sunrise, 10 suspects were in custody. But here's the part that had investigators confirming their theory. The gear they found during the Texas ambush matched what agents had seen in Atlanta. The same tactical vests, radios, and instruction books titled Organizing for Attack, Insurrection, Anarchy. Those matches caught Washington's attention fast. Within weeks, DHS and the FBI launched planned raids in Portland, Chicago, and Los Angeles, targeting safe houses and online accounts tied to Antifa-connected groups. Officials described it as a national enforcement phase, a shift from watching them to directly breaking apart their organization. Inside the seized apartments, law enforcement found encrypted phones, hard drives full of chat logs, and printed maps marking police buildings across several cities, buildings they likely planned to attack. For years, Antifa had been treated as just a belief system. But now, what investigators found told a different story. The reality was, they were a movement, acting like a network, moving money like a crime group, and striking like an army. So, for the first time, prosecutors are calling Antifa what it always denied being, an organized criminal network. And when they looked into how they were funded, what happened next would blow this investigation wide open. Behind every arrest file, investigators found a pattern. A few members were usually connected across several arrests, even though those arrests came from different states. They also found a few names that kept coming up in their encrypted chats. But they found the key signal and matrix, where new recruits are invited to have casual conversations about politics, share memes, and look at blueprints under fake screen names. While it simply begins as political debate, it quickly turns into planning violence. They teach things like how to block police vehicles, how to build a firebomb that burns hotter and longer, and how to erase digital tracks after an operation, so if one of them gets caught, they can't be linked to each other. That same communication method is used to recruit in all these small groups. The very same method, almost like there's a handbook being passed around. And the cherry on top? Investigators were also able to trace some money in Antifa's accounts to small channels connected to hubs in Oregon, Michigan, and New York. And guess who these hubs are connected to? The same groups investigators raided. Each hub had its own media person, a money group, and a set of rotating leaders who gave new recruits real-world assignments. Former member Gabriel Nadales says breaking Antifa down into smaller hubs is how the organization stays separated from the results of the violence. That's the system's strength. But fortunately for law enforcement, that is also its biggest weakness. He calls it an ecosystem of chaos driven by a single belief that America's institutions can't be fixed, only torn down and destroyed. Another insider, known publicly only as Eric, describes the early stages of Antifa as a social club. He says that's also a strategy. They make you feel welcome, get you fired up on their beliefs. And just when you think you've joined a group where you can vent your political frustrations, they hand you a mask. And once you wear it, they were much more like, hey, you better get in line with this. And if you're not, there's consequences. And there's pressure. So you were being forced to take violent action, or else you might have been hurt. Not only that, but there was pressure. There was being pushed out of the group, things of that nature. FBI analysts mapped more than 200 actions carried out by these small groups that all seemed to be connected by the same methods. Distraction with fireworks, ambush from hiding, ending with digital posts bragging about it hours later. Even the slogans match. They had the same fonts, the same wording, suggesting they shared templates with each other. But perhaps the clearest sign came from the money trail. One PayPal account in Portland received small donations. The same day, a Georgia safe house ordered large amounts of camping fuel and respirators. A charity in New York sent grants labeled Community Outreach to a fake group whose only expense was protective gear. Prosecutors now call that operational overlap. When agents raided a townhouse outside Seattle, they found 3 Faraday bags filled with phones, flash drives, and instruction booklets labeled Security Culture 101. One file inside read like a company manual, complete with shifts, passwords, and travel budgets, all for an organization that officially doesn't exist. For years, the public saw masked crowds and assumed they gathered by chance. But inside federal databases, the same crowds were easily connected, different cities, but the same command structure and the very same results. The violence by Antifa in Melbourne, which happens, and there's Antifa in Europe, and these groups are connected through networks because there's information, tactics, flow, and training. And as investigators pulled one thread after another, a darker picture appeared. They found out how the movement had survived this long without law enforcement finding the connections between them. Wait till you hear what they found. To understand how Antifa survived this long, you have to step inside the mindset that drives it. Because what holds these cells together is a different kind of power, unlike anything anyone has seen before. At the core of the movement is hatred for all structures. They believe that police are the tools of oppression, and that capitalism is the root of fascism, and that the environment must be defended by any means necessary. Now, in this video, you can see many of the signs asking Mayor Dickens to cancel the lease, others saying to defend the Atlanta forest. Now, when you look at this belief system, you might think they're harmless. And they are harmless, so to speak. But while their beliefs make them look like the good guys, according to former Antifa members, it's only because that's how they want to appear. In Portland, now you've spent plenty of time there. I've seen you take to the streets in Portland. But there has been chaos over the weekends again outside an ICE facility following the No Kings protest. But that is only part of the trick. Antifa, in its modern form, is a dangerous tool of violence that won't stop until they've brought down the American government. No, we don't want to kill Trump supporters. We want to stop fascists from organizing using whatever methods are most effective. It's a view built on never-ending resistance, a belief that the system itself is violence. So violence, in return, is justice. And according to former member Gabriel Nadalis, that story is how they pull people in, because they make it feel freeing at first. I've seen them punch far-right riders and fight with Nazis and all that, but I think thinking of them that way gives the wrong picture of them in one way, but then it turns to violence when they pick targets they need to hit. You might get into it, say, because you don't like bigotry in the music scene. And then later on, it's, you're going to follow these rules and you're going to say and think these ways. And if you're on the fence at all, according to journalist Andy No, who spent years following the movement, the Antifa movement is more like anarcho-collectivism, a rebellion rooted in faith. They somehow tie their beliefs to religion, making it feel like wiping out the government is their God-given mission on Earth. And when you're a lost teenager looking to feel part of something, that belief works. A lot of control in your life. And so if you can go out there and make yourself a hassle, then that's better than being an anonymous, kid. By the time recruits realize how far they've drifted, they've already cut ties with family, work, and anything outside the cause. That feeds the movement's most dangerous loop: self-radicalization disguised as doing the right thing.
I had little Molotov cocktails in my bedroom and a copy of the anarchist cookbook that I had photocopied.
It was just at the time. I'm like, oh, this is just a good time. And it's only later on. But if belief fuels the fight, money keeps it alive. And the trail of donations, fake charities, and cash apps is what will bring them down. While studying the arrests in Georgia, Treasury analysts noticed something strange. A small nonprofit registered to a single P.O. box in Atlanta had processed thousands of small donations labeled bail support. But when investigators compared those transactions to receipts found at the raid sites, the numbers matched purchases for gas cans, camping fuel, and tactical gloves. That discovery opened a new front in the investigation. Following the money, every single dollar, it turned out, left a fingerprint. Money moved from crowdfunding pages into community aid accounts, then spread through encrypted payment apps. They made sure to move money in small enough amounts to look harmless and fast enough to disappear before anyone could catch up. In New York, a sister nonprofit repeated the same pattern. Publicly, it promoted environmental justice. Privately, prosecutors say it paid back out-of-state travelers heading to direct action zones. The system worked because it was spread out. There was no single treasurer, no headquarters, just shared templates moving through chat servers. Every cell and hub handled its own money, then sent extra funds to a rotating list of trusted groups. But that wasn't all they found. Agents tracing crypto wallets also found conversion points at foreign exchanges. Small amounts going in, larger sums coming out, converted back to cash within days. It's a form of micro-laundering, kind of like the digital version of passing bills through too many hands to trace. When the search warrants came through, law enforcement found more records and USB drives that backed up their claims. They found donations from supporters mixed with payments for travel, bail, and protective gear. One spreadsheet added up to just over $310,000 in under 6 months. That evidence now forms the backbone of the federal financial crimes case. To stop it, the Justice Department turned to its white-collar crime units. Instead of chasing masked protesters, agents are freezing accounts, demanding records from payment processors, and cutting off the flow one transaction at a time. For the network, losing money means losing the movement. For investigators, it's the first real leverage point, a way to take apart an organization that refuses to admit it exists. And they used that leverage the best way they knew how. Now that they knew their structure, money, and beliefs, law enforcement stopped wasting time. By midsummer, DHS and the FBI had a new directive. Instead of waiting for riots to start before moving in and making arrests, agents would stop operations before they hit the streets. They called it pre-incident interdiction. The FBI and DHS formed a task force armed with a list of key people within Antifa. These are the top people, the ones renting vans, buying large amounts of materials, and running the encrypted message hubs. In Dallas, surveillance teams followed a suspected logistics coordinator for 3 weeks before moving in. Agents seized a laptop, hard drives, and a binder of passwords, data later used to identify multiple safe houses. In Portland, Homeland Security's Special Response Team raided a converted warehouse believed to be a drop point for protective gear and cash payments. The operation took 6 minutes, and while the arrests were happening, something else was falling apart behind the scenes. The Department of Justice built a joint intelligence unit to collect all the information they had gathered on Antifa, financial records, digital evidence, and field reports. The goal was to turn their seemingly unorganized chaos into something that could be taken to court. And it worked. Cases began coming together under federal conspiracy laws, and judges started approving wider surveillance warrants for online coordination. Still, even with arrests piling up, officials warned the campaign wasn't over. Agents reported there had been talk of retaliation, smaller cells threatening to act if leaders were jailed. So, to counter that, DHS placed liaison officers inside local police departments, linking intelligence in real time. Every new arrest triggered automatic digital checks for copycat plots, and for the first time, the government was moving faster than the network. But officials behind the crackdown know that momentum can cut both ways. Every takedown can fuel the story that the government fears dissent, exactly the kind of thing extremists need to recruit again. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps this channel keep digging into the stories others won't touch. And drop a comment below. Was this crackdown the end of Antifa, or just the start of its next evolution?